Casual Sports, where today we are going to be going over our Week 8 NFL Power Rankings for the current 2024 season. Before we get into this video, make sure you guys subscribe to the channel. It helps out a lot, more than you probably think. And so just make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss more content. But let's get into these power rankings. So the first group we have is the Patriots at 32, the Panthers at 31, the Dolphins at 30, the Browns at 29, and the Titans at 28. I think Patriots and Panthers are pretty surely the two worst teams. The reason I have the Patriots below the Panthers, despite the Panthers getting blown out by the Commanders, is the Patriots were 32 and they lost. And it's honestly just a toss-up. Like, it doesn't really matter, honestly, who's 31 and who's 32. Dolphins at 30. They just haven't looked good without Tua. They lost to the Colts, and they've just had so many quarterback injuries. However, Tua is, I believe, coming back this week. So if they look like they normally have looked over the last few years, then they'll probably start going up the rankings. But for now, based on how they've played without Tua, they're at 30. Browns at 29. They just lost Deshaun Watson. We'll move on. And they just haven't looked good. They might even end up trading Myles Garrett too. So I think they're 29. And then the last team in that bottom tier, I think, is the Titans. Because I think they deserve, although they lost, I mean, every single one of these teams lost, but I just feel like the Titans have been the most competitive. The Browns have been in that as well. But the Titans' defense has played good. Tony Pollard did get hurt, I think, but he's looked all right. So I think the Titans deserve the spot over the rest of those four teams. Next, we have the Jags at 27, the Raiders at 26, the Giants at 25, the Jets at 24, and the Colts at 23. This is sort of that group of bad teams that yet they can still compete. Like, these teams aren't good, but it's either they're not good just because they're not good, but they compete, or they're a little banged up. Jags at 27, coming off of a blowout win over the Patriots. I know it's the Patriots, but they've looked good. They've looked all right. They've been up and down, I guess is the best way to put it. Brian Thomas and Tanks Bigsby are playing great. Trevor Lawrence is slowly getting better throughout the year. And then that defensive line has played pretty good too. Raiders at 26, I didn't really move them. Who did they lose to? The Raiders, they might end up, speaking of star edge rushers that might get traded, the Raiders might end up trading Max Crosby coming off a loss to the Rams. That's right. I mean, they only lost by 5. Gardner Minshew came back in. I think the offense is better with Gardner Minshew. But again, they've just looked okay. They did have that win over the Ravens, so that's something. But they also lost to the Panthers. So, Giants at 25. Their defense is playing great. Dexter Lawrence leads the league in sacks at the D tackle position. I think he has 9 or 9.5, something like that. He's close to 10, which is insane. Brian Burns is playing good. Azeez Ojulari is playing good. They don't even have Kayvon Thibodeau as well. And then Malik Neighbors is still having a great year despite the down game. It's hard when Daniel Jones is your quarterback, but they do have pieces to look for, and they are staying competitive in a lot of games. So I have them at 25. I do have the Jets right above them, as I think part of their reason is their secondary is a bit banged up, so I didn't want to penalize them too much. And they lost to the Steelers, who are a lot better of a team, or who are similar to the Eagles. But the Jets, I think, it wasn't a good loss either, but I think they played a little bit better than the Giants. And then the Colts, I know they won, but they beat the Dolphins, and I think the teams above them just deserve that spot. They've been up and down as well. Next group is the Saints at 22, the Rams at 21, the Broncos at 20, Chargers at 19, Cardinals at 18. First, Chargers, Cardinals, I think they're in that same range, but I gave the Cardinals the nod as they just recently beat them. Saints just haven't looked good. I know Derek Carr's been hurt, but they've lost, 5 straight? I think they lost 1 or 2 games without Derek Carr anyway. They just haven't looked good. They're coming to their true self, so I put them down a lot. Rams at 21, I know they beat the Raiders, but they played okay now. They might end up trading Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford potentially. Who knows? But right now they're playing okay. Broncos, I've actually been very impressed with how the Broncos have played, coming off of their blowout win versus the Saints on Thursday night. And then, as I mentioned, I think the Cardinals and Chargers are above those other three teams, as I think they can compete with a lot more teams than those teams can. Next group is the Bears at 17, the Cowboys at 16, the Seahawks at 15, the Bengals at 14, Bucks 13, and Falcons 12. First, the Bears. I know they didn't play, neither did the Cowboys. But I think overall they've just looked better throughout the season than the Cardinals, Chargers, and Broncos and Rams. However, the Cowboys coming off of their tough loss to the Lions, and the Bengals coming off of a win over the Browns, and the Seahawks coming off of a blowout win over the Falcons. I thought they deserved the spot over the Cowboys, but I didn't want to move the Cowboys too far because they didn't play. And then the Falcons and Bucks at 12 and 13, both coming off of relatively blowout loss. I know the Bucks only lost by 10, but it was a lot of garbage time touchdowns. But I'll give the Falcons the nod over the Bucks, as one, they were ranked higher, and second, they beat them relatively recently. Next group is the Steelers at 11, the Eagles at 10, the Commanders at 9, the Niners at 8, the Texans at 7, and the Packers at 6. Steelers looked pretty good with Russell Wilson at quarterback. I was one of the people that was like, Justin Fields is 4-2. He's only thrown one interception. He has 10 total touchdowns. Why are you taking him out for Russell Wilson? But Russell Wilson looked great. Najee Harris had a good game. George Pickens had a great game. Pat Freiermuth was getting involved. So maybe that was the right answer all along. We'll have to see what happens next week when they play the Giants, who was a good defense. We'll see. But so was the Jets, and they played pretty well. So Steelers have looked good. Mike Tomlin, you can't doubt Mike Tomlin. You can never doubt him to not lead his team to a winning record. And it looks like they're going to do that again because they're only 4 wins away. Next team, the Eagles. Slowly with A.J. Brown slowly getting back in the lineup. They've looked great. Their offense is finally clicking again now that they have the trio of Saquon, Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and even Dallas Goedert. Saquon had that insane game versus his former team in the New York Giants. But I think this really started when A.J. Brown got back in the lineup, and you've seen this offense just go right back to its normal self, back to what it was in the first game in Brazil. So I have them at 10. However, I do want to give the Commanders the nod above them. I know they beat a worse team, but they beat it without Jaden Daniels, and the Commanders have just been putting up points pretty easily on most teams. Even when they lose, like when they lost to the Ravens and even the Bucks, they put up points. So I gave them the nod above the Eagles. Then the Niners at 8. I know they lost to the Chiefs, who were 1. But I just think the Packers and Texans have played slightly better than them. So I gave the Niners the 8th spot, and then Packers, Texans, it was them at 6 and 7, and the Packers just beat the Texans, so I gave them the spot above Texans. And then last group, these are kind of the only teams at the moment I could actually see winning the Super Bowl. And that is the Bills at 5, the Vikings at 4, the Ravens at 3, the Lions at 2, and the Chiefs at 1. Bills, they beat the Titans, so it is what it is, but they blew them out. Keon Coleman, I think he might have led the league in receiving yards that week. Josh Allen still doing his thing. Their defense is playing great. So I gave them the spot above the Packers and the Texans. However, I didn't put them above the Vikings, as Vikings are still only have one loss, and their one loss was a close at-home loss to the Lions, who are, as you can see, the second best team. And then the Ravens at 3. It was either them at 2 or the Lions at 2, and then the other one at 3. I just think the Lions have played slightly better than the Ravens, not much. Like, I don't see a team that can beat the Ravens or the Lions right now. And I guess the Chiefs as well, but I thought I'd give the nod to the Lions. Just, I don't know. It was really a toss-up, but I decided to go with the Lions as they beat the better team. The Bucs honestly aren't a bad team, but the Lions win was more impressive than the Ravens, at least in terms of who they beat. I know the Ravens blew out the Bucs, but then I had the Chiefs at 1. They're the only undefeated team. They've been at 1. They haven't lost. Why would I move them down from 1? Especially when they pretty easily beat a good Niners team. You can talk all about how they win, how Mahomes is playing. They're winning games, so I don't want to move them down. And that will officially conclude this week's Power Rankings, Week 8. Crazy that we're already in Week 8. Trade deadline's coming up. We'll have a bunch of stuff around that. If you enjoyed this video particularly, make sure you leave a like. As always, subscribe. Helps the channel out a lot. And also be in that comment section commenting what you agreed with, what you disagreed with, and give me some of your reactions from this week's game. And I'll see this week's games. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.